All right, everybody, we're live with Just the Gi Top podcast. So tonight we're really excited. We have Firas Zahabi from Tristar Gym on. So Firas, thank you very much, firstly, for coming on.
Thank you for having me, guys.
No, it's excellent to have you on. So we'll just introduce our regular podcast members as usual. We have Ahmed Trani.
Hello.
We have Jordan Short.
Hello.
We have myself, Adam Cousins, and a special guest star today. For those of you longtime Just the Gi Top followers, you may remember Rami Chirani as well.
Hi.
Rami's back from San Francisco. We had to fly him in specifically to Canada just to get him on the podcast. So thank you very much, Rami, for being on tonight. So for us, just to start, maybe we could talk a little bit about how you got into BJJ or MMA, and then we'll just kind of go from there.
Well, I got into BJJ after seeing Royce Gracie. And when I saw UFC, the preview for UFC 2, number 2, I was shocked that some little guy can beat up all these big, muscular monsters of men. You know, I couldn't believe this little guy they were hoisting up as the champion. So I was really mesmerized by the sport, and I was looking feverishly for an instructor. There was no instructors in Montreal. I was completely obsessed. I was getting every fight I can get on VHS. I was renting every UFC video. I was watching them over and over again, mimicking all the maneuvers that were used. And I was just really fascinated, even though there was no resources to learn. And then one day I met a purple belt from Renzo Gracie later on, and I just started training with him, and it took off from there. Been doing jiu-jitsu ever since.
How old were you at that time, like when UFC 1 came out?
Well, I think I was 18 when it first came out, but I didn't find an instructor till I was 19. No, sorry, I didn't find an instructor till I was 20.
And you were doing, I think, kickboxing at the time?
No, I started kickboxing right after. I didn't.
So basically, that was your introduction to any type of combat sport?
Yeah, I did a little karate when I was young, but I took up the stand-up arts after taking up jiu-jitsu. I had done a few months of boxing. Like I was just training because I was playing football, and I gave up football for martial arts. So I was doing a little bit of boxing on the off season. I did it for a few months, you know, just to get in shape and stuff like that. But I didn't have any real formal training whatsoever until I was 20 years old.
So you really started with kind of a balanced approach. You kind of took up a couple disciplines at the same time, or?
At the Tristar Gym, there was, you know, it was a gym with wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and kickboxing, you know. And that's why all the martial artists were there. So even when we would do grappling class, the kickboxers would be like, "Hey, can we spar with you guys?" You know, because Wednesday was Universal Sparring Day. Everybody could come and spar and TriStar. So the grapplers would be like, "Hey, do you mind if we try to take you down?" The boxers would be like, "Sure, try to take us down." You know, so it was just a great place to learn and cross train because there were so many different martial arts. TriStar Gym always had multiple disciplines under one roof. So. Of course, the grapplers would take the kickboxers down, and the kickboxers weren't crazy. They'd want to learn how to stop the takedowns. And then we wanted to learn how to strike because they were getting good at stopping the takedowns, and it just kind of evolved from there.
If we can go back just to the Royce Gracie, you know, watching the video there now. Firas, are you Lebanese as well?
Yeah, I'm Lebanese as well.
Like me and Rami are. So it must have really blown your mind because we're really into weightlifting and body image, and so. So when you saw a big muscular guy, that must have kind of blew your mind that he was getting choked out.
I still do biceps and triceps 5 times a week.
Just before the podcast started, I was just mentioning
triceps.
Holding a hookah flexing. Yeah, no, I know, man. I do the same thing.
Hookah flex is tight.
Okay, so you know, so I was at the TriStar. Sorry, I was at the TriStar website, and I saw that. So TriStar has been around since 1991. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So how did you get involved?
I wasn't there.
Well, yeah, you were a kid by then, right?
Until 2000 to TriStar.
Okay.
So TriStar operated and owned way before, before me, and I didn't buy TriStar until 2007.
Wow, so explain that. Like 2007, I mean.
Wait, so did TriStar?
Go ahead.
No,
Go
so
ahead.
I cut it. Yeah.
That's all right. No, I'm done. Go ahead.
But
Hello?
TriStar, did they operate as like an MMA, as like
No.
you just had the disciplines
No, they didn't have grappling till year 2000. That's why I was signed up there, because they had grappling. They were one of the first gyms to offer grappling. So I went there. I was just a student. I was a white belt. I started learning Jiu-Jitsu. But the Jiu-Jitsu didn't exist in Montreal, really. So when I would do tournaments, I would do the Canadian Open. And so the guys from Tristar would beat everybody. Why? Because we were being taught by a purple belt. So we go to these grappling tournaments where nobody had any experience in grappling. Karate instructors were teaching grappling. Kung Fu instructors were teaching grappling, right? Everybody was proclaiming that they teach grappling now because it became such a desired art, but there was no real teachers, right? Everybody saw Royce Gracie, the UFC boom was happening, and the only guy in Montreal who actually was teaching Gracie Jiu-Jitsu was Angelo Exeharakos, who was a purple belt from Renzo Gracie from the New York Academy. So when we would go there, we would just kill everybody. Even though we were just blue belts, there wasn't anything higher than one purple belt in Montreal at that time. So we would clean up. So after 6 months of training, I was already teaching classes. Why? Because I was very serious, and my instructor couldn't come in every day, and guys wanted to train every day, so they would ask me to teach. So I started teaching very early in my career. Now, you have to keep in mind...
Is that what eventually led to...
Yeah, eventually led to me being the head instructor, because Angelo was no longer able to teach. You know, he had a business. It was taking off. He was very busy. He said, look, I'm not able to come in anymore. Take over. I was the more technical student. I was the more cerebral guy. So like, look, let's let you take it over till I can have more free time and come back. He never found the free time. He never came back. I kind of basically just over time became the head instructor. But this is a time where even GSP was just a blue belt. You know, in the year 2000, we were just blue belts. I know it doesn't. It sounds like it wasn't a lot long ago. We were just blue belts. Now, if you think about it, when George fought for his first world title, he only had 7 fights, and he was just a purple belt. I don't even think he was purple belt yet, to be honest with you, because we met Wagner Fabiano. Wagner Fabiano came to Montreal, I would say, in year 2002, 2003. So we finally had a black belt in Montreal. We were all training with Wagner Fabiano, and I can't remember if George was even a purple belt when he fought Matt Hughes. I have to ask him. But look, we grew up with the sport. You know, that's how I always tell people. There isn't an instructor out there with 50 years of coaching MMA, because MMA hasn't been in the West for 50 years. It's only been 20 to 25 years, right? So the most amount of time you can have teaching MMA in the West is 25 years. I mean, it's only been here that long. So we're young guys, but we've been around since the beginning, you know.
So what led you to purchasing it there? So you were the head instructor, you became the head instructor, and then what led to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to buy you guys?
I won a lot of jiu-jitsu tournaments and a lot of full contact jiu-jitsu, like open hand pancrase, because MMA was still illegal early on. And I'm telling you, I was still just 2-3 years in my training, but I was just way better than the other schools, because they didn't have jiu-jitsu. We were getting Gracie jiu-jitsu from New York. You know, there was really, you'd go there and guys would try to put you in a headlock. You know, I mean, we're talking about the early days, and we were doing so well. We were, becoming very popular as an academy. And when MMA came, it was on the Indian Reserve, and it was illegal. It was on the Indian Reserve, so we could do what we want there. And our guys would win. We were very popular as an MMA club as well. I was doing Muay Thai. I went undefeated in Muay Thai. I was doing really well. So my students just kept growing. And soon enough, I had more students in my class than the entire gym put together. So the owner naturally came to me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in buying shares, working with me?" And he wasn't really in the gym business anymore. He just bought the Tristar Gym as a fun project, and his family's in the wine business and all that. So he eventually left the business, handed it over to me almost. You know, I basically bought the gym because I was in the gym every single day. You know, the original owner is Conrad Pla. He was a kickboxer. He decided he'd fund his kickboxing career by teaching kickboxing. And then he became an actor. He's a very serious actor. He's in all sorts of movies. So he sold it off to one of his friends who was in his family business. They make wine, etc. But he was having the gym as a side project for fun. And I think it got old, and he was like, "Hey, take it over. You're really serious about the gym. You're here every day. Everybody knows you. You got so many students. It's a good project for you." So over time, I took over the gym.
Was it the fact that you guys were offering Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu at the time that was really sort of attracting more people to the gym?
I think it was we were doing jiu-jitsu, but also we had a lot of guys fighting MMA, and they were very successful. You know, even till this day, we have a lot of MMA guys in UFC, winning in all the circuits across Canada. I mean, our guys do really well in both jiu-jitsu tournaments and mixed martial arts.
Jeez. So, you know, there's so much to ask you, right? And I know I don't keep you here for many hours. So I want to try to focus more on jiu-jitsu. I know MMA is your bread and butter, but I just want to get into your jiu-jitsu. So tell us, how did you get your black belt, and who did you get it under?
I got my black belt from John Danaher. I was going to New York a lot, you know, because I didn't have an instructor. I was the one teaching. I wanted to further my education in jiu-jitsu. George was going down to New York a lot. I would piggyback on that a lot. I would go there. We'd have these super camps. We'd have incredible training sessions. I was mentored by John Danaher. John Danaher really took me under his wing. We became very, very close friends, and we'd spend every day together. You know, so after practice, we'd hang out. Then we'd do 2-3 sessions a day together. I mean, I was really tight to the hip, you know, to John Danaher. And John Danaher is probably the greatest mind in jiu-jitsu today. He's innovated a lot of techniques. He's an incredible technician. He's not very well known because he doesn't have social media. He doesn't have a computer. He doesn't have a TV. He doesn't like to be in front of the camera. But he trains a ton of killers. You know, like Gary Tonin, Eddie Cummings, Frankie Edgar, Chris Weidman. I mean, so many greats. So many guys you've seen in UFC. Of course, GSP, Rory. And I got my black belt under him. And I've been training with, you know, I've trained with Braulio Estima, Ryan Hall, Murillo Santana, Roger Gracie. I mean, I've got to train with a lot of the who's who for months at a time, and especially during GSP super camps. You know, we put a lot of super camps together. That was a great benefit to me as a martial artist as well, because I got to work with so many great trainers.
John Danaher does seem a little bit mysterious in that you don't hear a whole lot about him, but I think everybody knows who he is, and the only things you ever hear is that the guy is just absolutely brilliant.
And that's the truth, man. You know, I recommend anybody who loves to do jiu-jitsu, go to New York. New York's the hottest place in the world to do jiu-jitsu. Go to John Danaher's class, and you'll understand what it's about.
So Firas, sorry, you got your black belt. What year? Sorry, maybe I missed it. Did you say?
I got my black belt in 2011.
Okay.
And I think it had a lot to do with me not wanting to put on a gi. I didn't put on a gi until 2009.
Okay.
I didn't put on a gi till
because you were focused on MMA at the time?
I was focused on MMA. I got my blue belt with the gi. Then I took it off. So after 6 months of doing jiu-jitsu, I got my blue belt. I never wore the gi again. So I got my blue belt in 2001. Or year 2000 or 2000 I got my blue belt. And I didn't put on a gi till 2009. So I got my purple belt, my brown belt, my black belt from 2009 to 2011. So I got all my 3 belts.
Oh, awesome. So, you know, speaking of black belt, teaching people, grading people, Miguel Torres, now, if I can bring this up, now correct me if I'm wrong, okay, for us. So he had his black belt, and I heard or read, this is a couple years ago, so maybe I'm wrong, but I read that he demoted himself to a brown belt, came under you to earn a black belt. Is that true?
Yeah, when he came to Tristar Gym and after his first practice, I think he was a little bit blown away. You know, we were doing a lot of techniques that I don't think he's seen before. Mm-hmm. And like I said, you know, this has nothing to do with me. You know, I'm not a special guy. I was just really mentored by really brilliant men. You know, and I would say Ryan Hall, John Danaher, of course, Braulio Estima, Murillo Santana, all these guys, world champions, really took me under their wing and taught me a lot of incredible stuff about jiu-jitsu. And I like to actually include Roger Gracie in that list. And they taught me such incredible things about jiu-jitsu that the jiu-jitsu at Tristar really exploded. That's the word I got to use. You know, it really exploded. From one year to the next, the jiu-jitsu just came so much stronger. And when Miguel came, I think he felt like he hadn't seen all these positions and these maneuvers before. So he was like, hey, you know what? He himself just said, look, I'm taking off my black belt. I want to get my black belt again anew, and I want to get it under you. So, you know, I was very surprised that he did that because he's been a long time black belt, but he really felt like he needed to take a step back and reconstruct his jiu-jitsu.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. All right. Just one other thing. Just speaking of mentors, right? And that's a good thing you mentioned that, because I had a question for you about that. Is how do you approach being a mentor for your fighters? Obviously, they look up to you, they trust you in some cases with their life, right? Especially in MMA, right? So, yeah. So what is it?
How do I approach that? I take it very seriously. I take it very seriously. Like, sometimes I'm tired, I don't want to go to practice, and I think to myself, hey, that guy's got to fight. You got to go work on this with him and go. And I get up and I go, and I show up to practice a lot. Like, I'm telling you, it's very rare I miss a practice. Ask my fighters. I show up to practice. I'm there more often than they are. And they're the ones fighting. I really feel like I need to be there as much as possible, because their job is very serious to me, and I want to make sure that I give them every possibility to win their fights. So my approach to that is just do everything you can to help them win.
What? Another thing, just kind of in line with that, I've heard a lot of like mixed opinions on this. But do you ever have people who saying like, oh, like I really whatever, and like they have no experience or anything? What do you usually tell those people? Like, do you have certain specific advice for them when they approach you? Because I mean, there are some people who don't.
That's a huge.
I feel like don't really fight.
That's a huge question I get all the time. I mean, that's a good question. I get that all the time. How do we get good? People come in the gym, and I teach the basics class twice a week. There are 5 basics classes at the Tristar Gym. I make a point to teach 2 of them a week. I believe that teaching the basics keeps me really sharp, and it helps me learn a lot. And I think I connect with the students, early on. And I think the number one thing when people come in to start Jiu-Jitsu, they're completely lost. You have to put yourself in the beginner's mind. They don't know the difference between side control and mount. They don't know how to do a rear naked choke. Like, that's how beginner we're talking about. These people, it's very intimidating. I think they're very brave. Hey, you come in this gym, you're the bottom of the food chain. I really think that they're brave. You're gonna sit here on the mat with all these people you don't know, and you're gonna let people grab you and choke you and armbar you and all that, and you're helpless. That's a big psychological toll for a lot of people. So I recently made a YouTube video that I just released. I think it was Thursday, on how to master Jiu-Jitsu. And I just started a YouTube channel now. It's not been too long. It's been a couple of months, and I thought, hey, I really got to discuss this one point. How do you tell people how to get good at Jiu-Jitsu? And I boiled it down to 2 things. Number 1, find a great trainer. That's the number 1 step you can do. Find a great trainer, because I've worked with good trainers and I've worked with great trainers. Great trainers make a huge difference. But you'll notice that even great trainers have mediocre students. They have like a handful of stars, and then some guys that are very good, and then other guys that are good, and then some that are mediocre. Because the second part of the formula, in my opinion, is you have to be a great student. And a great student is open to learning, and he's there to put in the time, and he's open to learning. If you have a great instructor and a great student, you're going to become excellent. The odds of you guys being good is immense. So it's not enough to go to a great gym. It's not enough to find a great instructor. You also have to be a great student. And the key to being a great student is being eager to learn. When you go to the mat, look to learn, don't look to dominate. That's what I tell my students, and that's what I believe is the key. Go there to improve yourself. Go there to learn more about the details, how to become more efficient, learn more of the concepts, than just going to do what it takes to armbar a guy or choke a guy out to feel good about yourself for that evening.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, man. I'm going through this right now, and so I was going to ask you as an instructor, where do you draw the line about not caring about the gym? So, gym and losing in the gym, because don't you want to, like, before a tournament, you don't want to go in feeling like a loser either, right? So, like, where do you draw that line? So obviously I want to go in, I want to learn things, but I'm getting choked 10 times in a class, let's say, and I'm competing like a week later or something. Like, don't you need to ramp yourself up?
But what I'm not saying go in the gym and let everybody kick your ass. That's not what I'm saying. Like, I roll all the time. I don't get my ass kicked. That's not. I don't want. I'm telling you, go in there and learn, and don't think about winning and losing. So what does that mean? If I pass the guy's guard, okay, yeah, I'm winning. But I'm always gonna ask myself, how could I have made that guard pass easier? What did I learn from my experience of passing this guy's guard? So I just finished the guard pass. Now I'm reflecting on my role, and I'm like, well, I should have done this maneuver and that maneuver. That would have made it easier, right? So I'm still learning. I'm not saying, hey, I passed that guy's guard, I kicked his ass, I'm the best, and I'm leaving.
Right.
I'm not focused on, hey, I beat the guy, therefore there's nothing to improve. That's not what I'm thinking. So in the video I mentioned that, you know, sometimes George would have perfect rounds. Think about it. He's arguably the greatest martial artist of all time.
Mhm.
If you take away every guy who's ever touched a drug and you take them off the table, there's only GSP left. He's the glaring answer. He's done VADA testing. He's offered his blood over and over again to be tested. I've offered to pay to test for him. Anybody who wants to challenge us, I'm willing to give blood, hair, and urine. Like, I mean, the guy is natural, 100%. Okay, so arguably he's the greatest martial artist of all time. After a round, sometimes he would destroy everybody in the gym. And what am I supposed to tell him? Hey, you're the greatest. Let's stop training. No, we would find new inefficiencies. We'd find new ways to make him more efficient and better. And that's the kind of guy George was. You know, is. He wants to be better, even though if he was the best in the practice room. And that's a very important concept. Most guys go in there and they kick everybody's ass and they think their jiu-jitsu's perfect. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So your jiu-jitsu can't be perfect. It's impossible. So what we do is we find different ways to challenge ourselves, and by either making the sparring harder for ourselves. So sometimes I'll roll with my students without any hands. I won't use my arms. I just roll with using my legs. Okay? Or sometimes I'll let my students start on my back, or I'll let one student have a minute each on me. So I'll start to get tired and they can start to score, etc. So it's all about learning. What else can I learn? And not that I win or lose. So if I were to get my guard pass, the discussion would be directed to why was the guard pass and how can we fix this issue. But when I go in the gym, I'm not looking to give guys arm bars because we don't want to go into Aikido mode. You know, like in Aikido, you're letting me wrist lock you and throw you to the ground. You're letting me toss you in the air, etc. It's choreographed. We're complying with each other. But then in a real fight, the guy's not complying, and I get my ass kicked. You know, so I'm not trying to tell people, hey, go in there and let your partners have their way with you. It's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is really about, regardless of what happens on the mat, don't take it emotional. Don't take it personal. Think about how to get better. What did you learn from your experience, and that's how you get good.
So you know you've got you know your GSPs of the world and your Rory McDonalds of the world and those types of guys. What about the guys that come into the gym who want to be the next world champion, you know, MMA guy, and you're looking at it, you know, because like you said, you know, there's people that are all stars, there's people that, you know, they're role players, right? You know, if you look at it like from a team perspective, right? You know, how do you handle those guys that come in and they've got all the heart in the world, but you just don't see the potential? Like, how do you deal with that?
This is what I tell people. People who come, I get a lot of crazies, you know. I love but I get a lot of characters, man. I get a lot of characters. Some guys come and they want to have an appointment with me before they start training, and they want to talk to me about their greatness and their. I always tell them the same thing. I said, save it, perfect, beautiful, but don't tell me about it. Show me. Next practice is at this time. Don't tell me how great you. Just come and show me. Don't tell me. That's the motto in the gym. Show me, don't tell me. Just show me. Get on the mat and show me. Lace up the gloves and show me. I don't want to hear. I want to see. And guys will either never show up again, or lace up and learn a valuable lesson, or prove to me. You know, it's one of those three. I can't sit there and win. You can't win me over by conversation.
Yeah.
Can you be very honest?
You can't win the world championship by conversation alone.
How often does somebody come in who talks about their greatness and then
if I gave them a chance every day,
follows it up?
So you know what? So Firas, also I read your Reddit AMA. So for those who maybe didn't catch that, you can go to reddit.com/IAMA and go, you know, search for Firas's name in there. You'll find it. Anyway, one of the questions that somebody mentioned in there, and you had a really kind of a cool answer. But I don't know if this has happened to you, but the Josh Neer incident, right? We all know what happened there, right? So a guy was chirping him online and said, "I'm going to come kick your ass." I'm just paraphrasing, and he went to Josh Neer's gym and Neer just beat the shit out of him, just like no mercy, like he just, this guy, you know, whatever. So do you ever get guys off the street? You said you have a lot of crazies. Did they just come off the street and say, "Hey, I can beat all of you," and he's all like crazy, and then have you guys just lit him up?
Listen, what Josh Neer has done, I can't say I have never had to do that, but I didn't put it on Facebook. I didn't YouTube it. You know what I'm saying? That kind of stuff happens. You know, sometimes we close the gym and the lights go dim, and guys have to settle their disputes. You know, it happens. But publicizing it publicly, I don't think makes any sense. Now, force for me is a last resort. It's an absolute last resort. But unfortunately, you're gonna meet people in the world where that's the only way you're gonna be able to deal with them. Mm-hmm. And I think Josh Neer found one of those guys, and he had no other choice. It seemed. I don't know all the details in the story. I don't want to get into it. I have no idea. From what I understand, that guy was heckling him, cursing him on Facebook, and Josh Neer said, "Well, why don't you show up and let's spar?" And they did spar. And I think it went overboard, the sparring, because there was nobody there to mediate the sparring. I have no problem with two guys sparring to figure out who's really, you know, because the truth of the matter, why do we spar? Because one guy thinks this will work, and one guy thinks that'll work, and let's spar and find out. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with the learning. But when the guy was down, Josh Neer kept hitting him, etc. I think it was a little excessive, in my opinion, actually quite excessive. There should have been a referee or someone to mediate the story, but it just seemed like it was Josh Neer running the show, and he was the one landing the blows.
Do you find that this sort of thing happens more in the MMA world than it does in, say, like the BJJ world?
I think it happens in the BJJ world. It's more gentlemanly because there's no actual hitting, right? So two guys don't like each other, they roll, and then they talk smack in the locker room. I think it's just a bad character. Martial arts is about making you a better person, in my opinion, and that's what we have to show to the world. Because the thing is with martial arts, if you create a culture in your gym that you're bad boys or you're badasses or you're tough guys, it's all going to blow back at you one day. Why? Because the next generation, they're going to be stronger than you eventually. You're going to get weaker. You know, you're getting older. You can't train as much, and you're going to have tough guys, aggressive guys on your hands, and they're going to push you out, squeeze you out. It's better to have a culture of respect, friendliness, and balance. You know, because the truth of the matter is, one generation peaks while the generation behind it is weak. You know, so for instance, if you're 10 years younger than me and I'm a black belt and I treat you like shit and I smack you around in the gym and I just treat you like really lousy, when you become a black belt and my skills are fading, now it's your turn to turn the tables on me. You know, now it's your generation's at its peak. But when you were a blue belt, if I was a black belt and you were a blue belt and I trained you well and I took you on my wing and I was friendly with you, when you become a black belt, you can be like, hey, you know what? He was always good to me. Even though he's weaker than me now, I show him respect, I show him love, and I show him, because he showed it to me when I was weaker, etc. So you can't always, it's kind of like the father-son relationship or parent-children relationship. You know, you treat your kids good, they'll take care of you when you're older. You treat them like shit, when they're older, they don't know who you are.
That's wrong. Now I know.
It's an interesting kind of thought because, you know, there's a lot of, when you talk about like the generations as it goes, if you kind of equate it to parenting as you kind of did, right? There's a lot of people saying that, you know, from a parenting perspective, you know, kids today are not as well behaved because their parents were too nice to them. So, you know, do you feel that people need to go through those kind of hardships that you went through to make sure that when they grow in their, you know, jiu-jitsu journey, just as, you know, your children grow in their life experiences, that they've had those hardships so they understand, so that they grow up to be a well-rounded, you know, person or jiu-jitsu practitioner?
Well, you know what, you hit something really interesting. The kids today, they seem like a lot of them are delinquents. You know, a lot of them are they don't respect their elders, etc. It seems today like, you know, I remember my wife when she was pregnant, she went on the subway and nobody would give her her seat. She was like 8 months pregnant, you know. And it's just that this generation, they don't, you know, we're Lebanese, you know, a lot of us here are Lebanese, and we know that, you know, you're supposed to respect your elders, etc. It seems here in the West we don't have that. You know, we see all sorts of crazy YouTube videos, but that has nothing to do. I think it has to do with our culture, you know, and in every gym there's a culture.
Yep.
And the culture is usually set by the gym owner / instructor. So
very much agree.
Like in my gym, everybody's treated with respect. Everybody's treated with respect, and I always tell people, The more you come to the gym, the more attention you get. So everything is fair, in my opinion. So I think if you teach people respect when they're young, and you create a culture of respect, they become respectful individuals. But when you have role models that are, you know, it's cool to be a badass in the West. So you get children. That's the culture. You get children that are badasses, and then they disrespect you. That's what a badass is. It's just the current culture of our time.
So I gotta ask, how do you spread yourself out and show attention from the guy all the way from the lowly white belt all the way up to, you know, your GSPs and Rorys of the world? Even on Reddit, people say, hey, Firas, I'm 16, I train, and I really want to come meet you, and you're like, hey, I'm here, here's the address, come on in. So you're very open. Your doors are always open to new people. How do you give all that equal attention?
I work double time, so I work 2 days a week. I run at least 2 practices a day. You know, during the daytime when the gym is quiet, people are doing their 9 to 5. The pros come in with me and we train. At night, people finish work, they come to train. I train them alongside the pros. A lot of the pros come in at night also. And for me, when I'm teaching the pros a maneuver or whatnot, if you're sitting there watching, that's fine. Plus, I also teach the basics class. So I teach the beginners, then I teach the all levels. I work overtime. I come home late. You know, I stay on the mat about 2 to 3 hours a night. So practice for me is not 60 minutes. You know, I see a lot of gyms. Oh, the class is from 6 to 8. Tristar's classes don't end. You know, and I always told myself, like, I don't understand how a class can end. What if we're not done training? You know, what do? You tell me to leave? Like, how do these gym operate? We train until everybody is done. You know, I'm usually the last guy to leave the mat. You know, so if somebody's got a question, I always tell my students, come and ask me. I'm happy to answer it. And I don't answer everybody's question. If you got to give a question and you're a blue belt or whatnot, I might call over one of my brown belts or purple belts, ask him to answer it for you. And if he answers it wrong, now I know that my brown belts don't even know this, so I'll teach it to my brown belt, who will then teach it to the blue belt. I have kind of a system, a hierarchy. You know, I'm always using us as one big team. You know, one big engine. That's how I see the Tristar Gym team. I'm one instructor. I can't be everywhere. Together, we're one big giant engine, and I use every piece of that engine to make it run.
Damn. Okay. Man, that's.
Hope that answers your question.
No, it does. It just opened up so many other ones, but I'll leave it at that, because that's. You're away. You're at fight camps. You're at the UFC events. You're all over. That's what I'm saying. So you must have some second and third in command, like you said, like guys who take over in your absence. Right?
I always have somebody. Look, listen. I got guys who train with me every single day. I go in the gym, they're there. You know, and I train them twice a day, every day. So if I leave for 3-4 days, those guys know exactly what I want them to show, because I've been showing it to them every single day. So one of my guys will take over that one class, and they'll do a good job, and they'll teach exactly what I asked them to, and everything's quite controlled.
For us, I'm interested. Just, you know, you're talking about, you know, new generations and lack of respect, and just kind of generally how that goes. And, you know, I've trained at a number of different gyms, kind of, you know, dropped in when I'm traveling for work and things like that. And you see a lot of different gym cultures, I guess you could say. 100%. So I guess, what would you say the culture is at Tristar, right? You know, you see some gyms where it's like very sort of more on the traditional martial arts side of things, like, you know, people don't speak when the instructor's speaking. You know, you show up late for class, you ask permission to come on the mats. You know, you don't see people, you know, doing anything but what the instructor is showing. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you see clubs where, you know, people are rolling in late, people skip the warm-up, people are drilling other techniques while the class is going on. What's the kind of culture at Tristar?
Well, you know, Sherdog came in once to, Patrick came in from Sherdog to watch, and he described it as he said Tristar, he was talking about, you know, the different feel of different gyms, and he's like, Tristar is like, it's like a factory, you know, and it's true in a way, because Tristar is all about efficiency. We train in the most efficient manner possible. I always tell my students, look how many guys we have in UFC, we've brought to UFC, and we're a city of less than 2 million people. Why? Because our training is efficient. Our training is, our formula, our curriculum is geared towards efficiency. There are much bigger cities in the U.S. with far more resources, with far more black belts, with far more instructors, with far more fighters, and we have more fighters than they do in UFC. Why? Because everything is geared towards efficiency. If you come to me and you tell me, hey, let's do it this way, practice. If it's more efficient, I will say, yes, that's a good idea, let's do it. Show me a more efficient way, that'll be the new method we use. So for me, everything is geared on efficiency.
So speaking of efficiency, you mentioned you need a good trainer, or instructor rather, and a great student, and right there you got it made. So especially in Jiu-Jitsu world, and I'm sure maybe in MMA world, you're seeing a lot of guys who want to move to California. They want to go to Atos. They want to go to New York, to Marcelo Garcia. They want to get Cowterra. They want whatever. They're just going there in hopes to be world champions and whatnot. And then you mentioned a good point. You're in Montreal. Small, it's not small. It's 2 million people is a lot, but still, it's small compared to down there. And you're generating champions, and whatnot. So why are people not getting it? That it's not who you train with, but it's also the mentality in your head and the efficiency, I guess. Like, well, why is that not?
It is a lot of who you train with. It is because the knowledge is important, right? The instructor, a great instructor, has incredible knowledge and he's willing to share it. The knowledge is the first one. It's the first thing I look for. Okay. So if you tell me, hey, we're going to go into a gym, but there's what they teach there is very it's very outdated. I don't want to go there. So the number one thing when I said find a great instructor. Now, a great instructor is a lot of things, but one thing a great instructor has is knowledge. Knowledge is paramount. But knowledge, you can have the best instructor and a mediocre student who's not open-minded, won't put in the hours. Doesn't really, he's not interested to really develop a deep understanding of the art. So what I'm saying is the second piece is that the student has to also be a good student to have the magic of a world champion or a very successful career. So for me, Tristar, I believe that over the years we've had great mentors and they've shared a lot of their knowledge with me, and I try to be the best mentor I can be. But we have a very also, because those are the two first most important things. The other number three would be, well, probably in the top 10 definitely is training efficiently. It's not enough to have the knowledge. It's not enough to be willing to train and sacrifice. You have to train also in the most efficient way possible.
So can you give an example of that? Just because especially in Jiu-Jitsu now, and I'm sure MMA has the same thing, but you have people who train full time, right? Like 3 days a week, they're on the mats. Sorry, 3 times a day, they're on the mats, drilling, sparring, drilling.
I'll give you an example. I know exactly what you're trying to say. I'll give you an example. Like sometimes I go to a Jiu-Jitsu club and they make us run around, and they make us do shrimp, and they make us do cartwheel, and they make us do a warm-up that's maybe 20 minutes long. For me, that's a waste of time, all due respect. And I'm not criticizing anybody specifically. I think it's a giant waste of time. Me, I believe you should warm up with technique. So while you're doing your running and your shrimping and your cartwheels and your dive rolls and all, I'm doing duck under, snap down, inside trip, guard passes, my arm locks. I'm warming up with all of that. Okay. So when you start drilling, I've already been drilling 25 minutes. Now 25 minutes now might not seem like a long time for you, but add 25 minutes 3 times a day for a year. I have 200-300 hours more of drilling than you. When we fight at the end of the year, who's going to get his ass kicked, me or you? Well, let me ask you this. Are you going to be doing dive rolls when we fight? Are you going to be No, you're not. You're going to be trying to do duck under, snap down, double leg, but I've done it way more than you, and I'm more familiar with the combinations than you. You will get your ass kicked. So that's just one of the many, what I call junk training. I have a thing called junk training, where I find that this training is not the best way to get good.
I feel like you're targeting me. I'm not the one who did it.
No. I'm not calling out anybody specifically. And I know there's a lot of world champions out there that do it that way. And that's fine. But my argument is they didn't become world champions because they did junk training. They did other stuff that was really good. And they could have been even better than they were. Like, for instance, I don't jump rope. People are thinking, you're crazy. You think jump rope is no... I think jumping rope is a waste of time. If you jump rope, I believe it's detrimental to your career. I never use jump rope with GSP. Why isn't he tripping all over his feet on the octagon? Why isn't he running out of gas? Why doesn't he have weak calves? But people always tell me, hey, but Muhammad Ali jumped rope and he was the best. He would have been the best if he jumped rope or not. Because I know a lot of people that jump rope and they ain't Muhammad Ali, right? So jumping rope doesn't make you Muhammad Ali, because then there would be lots of Muhammad Ali. So we have to look at the difference between correlation and cause and effect. These are two very different concepts. People correlate things and assume that they're cause and effect, when in fact they're not.
So speaking of training and junk training then, and this is questions from Rami, but his internet's really bad. He's been chopping up, so he wrote it for me to ask you. Strength and conditioning, obviously very important, not junk training. How do you fit that into a regular day of training?
I didn't say it wasn't junk training. You said it was.
So
this is the first time we've ever had a majority of Lebanese panelists on the podcast. There will be a lot of talk of bicep day.
Not only that, you're probably going to be under investigation very shortly.
Oh man,
This call is being monitored, I'm sure.
that bill, man, yeah, that's bad news.
It's not a good roster. I should have shaved.
Yeah. I'm trying to look white. You know, I'm trying.
Yes, you can.
But yeah, strength and conditioning.
Well, I'll tell you something. Strength and conditioning, in my opinion, can shoot you in the foot. It's not a lot of people think, hey, strength and conditioning is buy all this fancy equipment and create all sorts of crazy circuits and go through them and you'll be in fit. Fitness is more complicated than that. But the problem with strength and conditioning is that there's a lot of guys with weekend certificates out there, and they proclaim themselves to be the ultimate gurus. You know, strength and conditioning, in my opinion, has been made overly complicated. I've used strength and conditioning, but I wouldn't really necessarily use that term. Okay, that's just more of a popular term. I've done strength and conditioning for GSP for many years, and I think you guys would say he's in incredible shape. He's not a guy who gasses out or whatever. But strength and conditioning is more complicated. It's more complicated in terms of periodization than it is in terms of tools. People complicate it in terms of gadgetry, which I hate, which I dislike. I don't like the gadgets. I don't use a lot of gadgets. I use 3 or 4 tools to get in shape. That's it, period. And in terms of understanding how to go about creating endurance, power, and strength, people made that overly simple. So when it comes, think about it as hardware and software. You know, hardware being all the gadgetry, software being knowing how many reps, sets, and when to work out. That will be the software, the non-concrete part of the intellectual part of strength and conditioning. People are lopsided. People are doing too much of the gadgetry and not enough of the periodization.
Okay.
So then what's the best way to go about strength and conditioning for something like BJJ?
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Number one is you start with an evaluation. How do I know? It's like saying, hey, doc, what's the best medicine for somebody who's sick? Well, I got to know what the fuck's wrong with the guy. Am I right? Am I right?
Yeah, Jordan, that's horrible.
Does the guy have a mobility issue? Does he have a strength issue? Does he have an endurance issue? What are his natural traits? Like, for instance, let me give you a for instance. Let's take GSP, okay? So when I started working with GSP, his body type is what? What kind of body type does he have?
Exomorph?
Ectomorph. He's an ectomorph, right? Ectomorphs have natural levels of endurance. You know, like GSP, if you ask him, hey, do you do any conditioning? He'll be like, conditioning sucks, doesn't exist. Now, I didn't do a lot of conditioning with George. I did a lot of lifting with George. Why? Because ectomorphs have natural endurance or natural strength.
I'm scared to answer.
They have natural endurance.
Endurance, yeah.
Okay.
Now, what's a Vo2 Max? You know, does anybody know what a Vo2 Max is?
It's like a maximum volume of oxygen, right? Is that like
exactly like let's say for instance, look at your arms. Look how long they are. You know, are you born with that or did you work out to have those?
No, born, of course.
You're born, right? They're that link. Your arteries and your heart are the same thing. Some people's arteries are bigger than others.
Okay.
Bigger the artery, the bigger the more blood, the more oxygen, right? Now your arteries after 2 years, if I took you to a track, okay, if I took you to a sprint track, and I made you sprint, after your arteries will literally get bigger and bigger because they're saying, hey, we need to pump in more blood, right? But these arteries can only stretch so big so far. After 2 years, you can sprint every day, twice a day, 5 times a week. Your arteries will not get bigger. Your Vo2 Max has plateaued.
That's it. So Vo2 Max is not the only factor in endurance, but it's a major factor. It's definitely a major factor. Now, just by observation, I estimated George's Vo2 Max to be above the normal. Now, one day we took him to sports science lab and they tested his Vo2 Max with a machine, and lo and behold, he has a 25% larger Vo2 Max than a natural normal athlete. Normal athlete, not normal person. Mm-hmm. So that is a significant margin. So if I made him do a lot of endurance, I would have been wasting my time. Now, I've tried to explain this phenomenon to George, but he doesn't really catch on. So he tells me, I don't believe in endurance. It's bullshit. I see those guys running the track, they're fucking dumb. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. I'm like, George, that guy, he needs it. You don't. You just don't understand why. It's hard for me to explain it to you. But if you have a natural Vo2 Max, it's genetic. You can run on the treadmill quite comfortably for a long period of time. This is genetic. Now, I'm not going to waste my time making you do laps around the track. But for instance, if you gave me a guy like, I don't know, like give me a Vitor Belfort, let's say, you know, a guy who does really well in round one but starts to slow down. Well, guess what? I would want him on the track more regularly. Because the first thing your body does to increase endurance is it increases Vo2 Max. After that, it starts to remove lactic acid at a faster rate. Your body actually gets good at removing lactic acid. It's a skill. And thirdly, the next step where you can, so once you've maxed out your Vo2 Max, once you've maxed out removing lactic acid, the last step is teaching your athlete to relax. People learn to do things more efficiently. And if you've ever seen somebody who learns how to box, they're throwing their punches, they seem robotic and very tight. After a year, their punches are much faster and more loose. Did they change the muscle fiber makeup? No. They just learn to relax the muscles that are antagonists to the propelling muscles. So for instance, when you throw a punch, your tricep is propelling your arm forward, your bicep only pulls your arm back. So if you throw it's like having your foot on the gas and brake at the same time. If you throw your jab and you're clinching your bicep, you're slowing down your jab. Your bicep is the brake. So that's why you see like a guy who has his hand down when he's boxing. It's not because he's too dumb to protect his face. It's because when you have your hand down, it relaxes your bicep. Right? Because when you hold your hand up, you turn on your bicep. So when you turn on your bicep, it's harder to throw punches because your brakes are on. So when you're lowering your hands, you can get more velocity because the brakes are off. So lo and behold, after you've done these three things, you're maxing out your endurance potential. Now there are other factors. I'm just giving you the big three. There are other factors. Okay? So anybody out there who's an expert hearing this, say, hey, he forgot one or two factors. I'm leaving them out because I want to put this in a nutshell, because we can have a lecture on this all night long. So if I want to build endurance, I would go down that avenue. Now, if you look at George, George doesn't need endurance. He naturally has endurance. I needed explosiveness and power. So I made him do a lot of lifting and Olympic lifting and swinging. And we did a lot of gymnastics because I believe that everybody should do gymnastics, because gymnastics is what Michael Kogan would call extension connection, or what people say stabilizers. You know, you have to strengthen your stabilizers. Now, everybody has to strengthen their stabilizers. That's the universal one. So if you told me, hey, if I don't tell you anything about this guy, what can you do? What can you give him as a tip? I would say strengthen your stabilizers. Why? Because you strengthen your stabilizers. The stabilizers are the weakest link in the chain, and you're only as strong as the weakest link. Yeah. So gymnastics, gymnasts have the best stabilizers, and by stabilizers I mean the muscles that keep you in balance. And in my opinion, the athletes with the best balance have the most potential.
So in a nutshell, then, really, strength and conditioning is really it's personal. It's not personal, but it's different per person.
It's different per person, absolutely.
So you can't really give a formula for whatever, I guess.
I would tell you this. I would give you general guidelines. You know, I mean, I would tell you guys this. One, learn to move your body weight exercises, gymnastic type exercises. You don't have to learn how to do backflips and gain. You don't have to learn all the crazy stuff. That's not what I'm saying. Buy Christopher Summers' Olympic Body. He wrote a great book. Do high reps for if you want to build endurance. Do low reps if you want to build strength. Use your body weight. Use the kettlebell and use the barbell. Those three tools, you have everything. If you have I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Lastly, the other tool would be the track. So I would really use 4 tools. Okay, so you'd have your body weight, that including chin-up bar or rings. You'd have the kettlebell. You'd have the barbell, where you could do a lot of key exercises. Only the classics. Don't go anything but the classics. Squat, deadlift, clean, and jerk. Remember, if you clean and jerk, you got to have proper technique. Don't do any of that crazy CrossFit high rep stuff. You'll break your back. If you don't know anything about Olympic lifting, don't Olympic lift. You're just going to cripple yourself. Okay. I always tell people, Olympic lifting can do two things. It can make you really strong, or it can cripple you. One of those two is going to happen, because you're not going to be strong and crippled. You're going to be crippled, or you're going to be strong. The kettlebell is fantastic. I prefer not to swing. I do almost all exercises except swing, because swinging causes shearing in the lumbar spine. I think it's not good for your lumbar spine. But you got to have proper technique. The best book on lifting, on training ever written, in my opinion, is The Supple Leopard, written by Kelly Starrett. You read that manual, that is the most important manual on how to get into shape. The second most important manual, I would say, modern day manual, would be Power Speed Endurance by Mackenzie. I forget his name, his first name. But he teaches pose running, how to run. You know, running is also a technique. People don't know how to run. I tell people, go hit the track, and then they go and they run and they get injured. If you don't know how to run, you'll get injured. If you don't know how to lift, you'll get injured. If you don't know how to stabilize your spine, you will get injured. If you don't know how to stabilize your neck, you will get injured. If you want to reach mastery, you have to avoid injuries. So in a nutshell, use your body weight. Use the simplest tools. The simplest. High reps for endurance, low reps for strength. And the mother of all exercise selection criteria, the mother of all, is stability. Is it an exercise that demands stability? If yes, it's a good one.
And stop curling in the squat rack, Ahmed.
Now, there's an exception. The biceps are really important, right? When
oh man, yeah. Look at that.
He's right.
See, Adam, you don't know. Adam's got these like white genetics, man. He doesn't like. You know what I mean? He's just got a belly. But look at us, man. Like, what? You can't. Adam, where are you at? I mean.
Yeah, no, I'm here. I'm here on that.
Just put the phone.
You guys want to get into a flexing battle?
Okay, you know, Firas, you know what? We're almost at the time, but I do want to ask just one more question, and that is Metamoris, right? So. Rory McDonald, right? He competed in not so long ago against JT Torres, and I want to know, you know, you're a scientist, especially you analyze videotape, I'm sure. Did you approach Jiu-Jitsu any differently? Did you watch tape of JT?
Well, don't forget, Rory had just fought.
Right.
Fought Tarek Safadine. That was a hard fight. It was a hard training camp. I believe the Metamoris was 3 weeks later. We didn't train, to be honest with you, for JT Torres. All due respect, I'm not saying we're not overlooking him any way whatsoever. It was a side, fun adventure, test your skill type thing. Did Rory ever see JT Torres roll or study his tape? Not at all. Did we dissect his passing methods, etc.? Not at all. And only because of the time constraint. No disrespect to JT Torres, I was assuming that he would do phenomenal, and he's extremely dangerous. He's a legitimate world champion. He's one of the best pound-for-pound grapplers in the world. There just wasn't enough time. I had to pick my battles. Do we get ready for Tarek Safadine, or do we get ready for JT Torres? You know, and Rory's an MMA fighter, right? So we had to put our first things first. You can't be everywhere at once. You can't do everything at once. So we prepped for the MMA fight. Rory had never seen JT Torres before.
What belt is Rory? Does he have a belt? Or?
He's a black belt, yeah.
He's a what, sorry?
He's a black belt.
Oh, he's black belt, sorry. In gi or no gi or?
He's never put on a gi, but he's an honorary black belt because his jiu-jitsu is obviously that level.
Okay, amazing. So
eventually, I'd want him to put on the gi, and I would honor him with a black belt. I would give him a black belt definitely, but he's not in his gi phase right now.
Okay, so I mean, this is a stupid question, but I mean, obviously we saw Joe Lazon go into Metamoris against Dylan Dinas as well just recently. Dylan Dinas beat him, right? But I mean, so stupid question. Yeah. Why did that happen? Is it just because these guys are grappling specialists and?
Well, I believe an MMA guy can beat a jiu-jitsu guy. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
It's apples and oranges. Dinas, he just knows his jiu-jitsu better. That's the bottom line.
Right.
But I believe that a MMA guy could win, absolutely, because MMA guys, don't forget, they're usually very athletic, more athletic than a jiu-jitsu guy. Right. So it can happen. It will happen. I believe it will. And if you look at, for instance, Paul Harris, who did go in Abu Dhabi, right. He tapped out Lavado Jr. I mean, he went to the final. He almost beat Gavao. You know, it was a very close match. And this is an MMA guy. You know, so I think that
even Josh Barnett.
Josh Barnett's the world champion.
Yeah.
And he beat Dean Lister. You know, fair and square. He's an MMA guy. So I really believe it can go both ways. Just if your jiu-jitsu is better, you're gonna win.
Okay. Okay, Adam, you had the question.
Yeah, no, I'll pass on that. No, so there's just a couple things. You know, you had talked about efficiency earlier for us, so I just wanted to kind of give a bit of a shout out to a TriStar member, David Aguzzi, who's running exceptionally efficient tournaments. You know, gi and no gi round robin tournaments in Ontario, Montreal. He ran one in Hamilton on Saturday. I performed very, very poorly. We won't talk about that. VJ Hemenchel shout out. But you know, you can see that that efficiency methodology is definitely is passing through, and David speaks very highly of you. So I did want to mention David on the podcast.
Oh, David's a student of Firas's? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he trained with me and my brother. He trained with Ahmad Zahabi. He trained with Fabio Hollanda for a while, and with me also.
Oh, is he with you right now?
Yeah, but he's been pretty busy. You know, I haven't seen him as much as I'd like to, but he's definitely training with us as well.
When are you going to give him his black belt? He's been a brown belt for 7 years now or something.
It's true. That's true. He's got to be more regular.
Yeah.
Black belt's not easy to get, but soon, there's going to be a lot of guys getting their black belts to TriStar soon. In the next, I would say, in the next year or two, I would say, a lot of black belts. I got a lot of brown belts in the gym, and I would say a year and a half or so, a lot of them are going to be getting their black belts. But again, don't forget, we don't give black belts easily. I haven't given one yet, and the criteria is difficult. For me, if you get your black belts, like you got your PhD.
Yeah.
And I don't cut corners. You got to know all the positions. You got to know variations. You got to be an encyclopedia. If you're not, you're gonna wait. You know, and that's just that's the correct way, in my opinion, to give out a belt. It doesn't matter I find a lot of schools now are giving out the belts fast because they wanna beef up their memberships. They wanna keep their customers happy, etc. Jiu-Jitsu's got to be very careful with this. You know, that's what happened with karate. You know, remember karate in the 60s and 70s? The guys were killers. Now a guy's got a karate black belt, we laugh at him. You know, yeah, you got your karate black belt. So what? There's 1,000 guys with a karate black belt. The criteria has to be the jiu-jitsu criteria for black belt has to remain true to Carlos and Elio Gracie's criteria.
Oh, fair enough.
I agree.
And you know what? Well, one other question for us. I always have these questions popping up, but just and I don't want to keep you. I know it's Sunday night and you probably want to watch Game of Thrones or something. But
I watched it already.
Oh, did you? Okay, I haven't watched it yet, so don't tell me anything. But so yeah, well, what are your thoughts on like
Game of Thrones?
Game of Thrones podcast? No. So, but yeah, Worlds and Pans. Do you have any of competitors that partake in the big IBJJF circuit right now at all, or?
No, not. I got a bunch of guys doing those tournaments, but I don't really keep track. To be honest with you, I got a guy who runs it. The gi guys. I train everybody, but I don't go to the jiu-jitsu tournaments. I don't have enough time. My wife would divorce me if I'm away just for fights. You know, the MMA fights. Yes. I'm there so often that if I started doing jiu-jitsu tournaments as well, I'd never be home. You know.
Okay, fair enough. Do you enjoy them? I was gonna say.
I watch every. I'm always on Reddit just for that. See what's the biggest match. But I watch it just to learn, you know. But I mean, like when it comes to my guys when they go do their gi and stuff like that, I don't really follow too much. I just watch the big names that I know and I study their technique.
Amazing. For us, I wanted to ask: are there any up and coming guys at TriStar that in MMA that we should be? We should keep our eyes on.
There is, you know, but I hate signaling out guys because I feel like I put pressure on them. So I always tell people the same thing. I believe all my guys can be a world champion. It's really, you know, it's in the mix for everybody. So I tell people watch out for all my guys because I hate to put extra weight on one of my guys' shoulders.
Well, I mean, Rory's got a big fight coming up next too, so
Yeah, that's right.
that's probably the next champion right there.
Hopefully. I don't like to count my eggs before they hatch, so I'll tell you on July 12th, I'll tell you if he's the next world champion or not.
That's awesome. All right, well, Firas, Adam dropped out. I think he lost his connection really quick. We usually wraps this up, but I just want to say from all of us, thank you very much for joining us. You're a big name, and the fact that you even did this speaks, loudly of you to do that. I don't know if I'm wording this correctly, but thank you very much for coming on with us, man.
Thanks, guys. It was fun, and we'll do it again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much. Take care.
Had fun. Thank you.